This FedGov Today program is sponsored by Maximus. On this edition of FedGov Today with Francis Rose, why doesn't everyone like the Technology Modernization Fund?
We are spending taxpayers' money. So in use of taxpayers' money, there's always questions of, can you do it better? Can you do it with less? And sometimes if money goes to one thing, that might mean it doesn't go to something else.
Former federal CIO Suzette Kent on FedGov Today in just a moment. Uniting program strategy, advanced technology, process, and execution for a more efficient government. That's Maximus. Every program, every service, every time. That's innovation forward. Learn more at maximus.com/federal. The Technology Modernization Fund will get a revival and a cash infusion under the budget agreement that should take effect this week. The bill says $5 million would go to the TMF to, quote, remain available until expended. Suzette Kent is CEO of Kent Advisory Services. Tony Scott is Chief Executive Officer of Intrusion. They are both former Chief Information Officers of the United States. And thank you both for joining me. Suzette, I start with you, and this question has nothing to do with the TMF. How did the center of gravity of federal technology become Dallas, Texas, where both of you are, instead of Washington, D.C.? What did I miss? What memo did I not receive? Welcome to both of you, Suzette.
We don't get snowed out, and we have great airports, and Tony and I get to talk to each other, usually from seats across the aisle or one or two down from each other. But you can get everywhere in the world from Dallas.
I guess so. The Technology Modernization Fund, I know you were a big advocate of it in your time as federal CIO. Both of you were. Suzette, what do you see in what appears to be happening budget-wise that is good not just for the Technology Modernization Fund, but good for the agencies that have drawn on it and would like to draw on it in the future?
Francis, I have to start by saying, thank you to Tony. And I think the Technology Modernization Fund is one of those really great things that, as it has moved through every administration and multiple CIOs, it has continued to deliver value. And so the architecture and ideas, kind of started, when Tony was there. It was early, it was actually March 3rd was the very first meeting that we ever held of the Technology Modernization Fund board, when I started. And, then it is now, has continued to pass through Claire and now to Greg. Over $1 billion, 70 projects, 34 agencies. And if any of your listeners haven't taken a look at the website that lists the projects and the kind of impact, those are the things that are representative of great technology investments and how we want to, see things go. So I am very positive that it continues to get support. I think for agencies, if anything, as we've seen shutdowns and CRs, and one of the examples of a source for near-term money is that importance continues. And we have seen other benefits. We continue to see other benefits of agencies working together on priorities of the agency, bringing together technology, the CFO's office, and impact, and capturing the impact in a way that the artifacts can be used for other agencies to kind of do the same thing. So a lot of the great, ideas that came along with it continue. They're continuing to deliver. And I know that in preparing for this, Tony and I were exchanging messages, really, really hopeful to see it continue forward.
Oh, I wish I could read those messages. I bet I'll just leave that there. Tony, welcome. It's great to see you. Is what you've seen over the last couple of years from the Technology Modernization Fund realizing the vision that you and your colleagues at OMB had, and that the team that you worked with on Capitol Hill had when the TMF came into being?
I would say yes, emphatically. And in fact, everyone improved on it over the years. Suzette did in her time, and Claire did in her time. And I expect the same thing will continue to happen and evolve. But, the basic fundamental core elements of it, I think, survive pretty well intact. And and I think, as Suzette said, are, accomplishing what we had hoped would occur, which was, find a funding source for those projects that take a longer term investment, perhaps, or, might, be things that an agency couldn't immediately fund, but are super necessary for a modern, enterprise. And, during my time, and I know Suzette saw this as well, there were so many agencies that just struggled to stay current, much less get ahead. And this was a mechanism for them to really, put money where it needed to be. And one of the key elements was the support of the senior leadership of the agency as well. That was one of the core concepts. And when you can have that kind of visibility and leadership, I think you can get a lot of things done.
Tony, what were the improvements that you saw subsequent to your tenure as federal CIO that, in your view, make TMF better today than it was when it started?
Well, one of the concepts we had early on was that an agency should repay the fund in full, kind of make a business case. And it became clear that, while there are some projects that clearly could do that, there were many that wouldn't be able to fully pay back or in a reasonable amount of time, but were still really necessary projects that, needed to be done. And so I think that's one of them, for example, that I think, reality sort of sunk in and everybody realized that, that was something that might need to change.
I know one of the things that we did enhance, and it kind of went into both some of the evaluations of the initiatives, but it is now even more formalized. In my conversations about what they're doing now, it is more formalized that when that initiative happens, it has to be, if it's testing a concept or a theory or the components of emerging technology, how the agency did the thing that they did has to be captured in a way that is a reusable artifact for other agencies. So no matter what the particular initiative is, there's some all of government benefit. I also think Tony kind of said the concept of return on investment. I think we open the aperture in many cases by involving the CFOs of what does that return on investment mean? It doesn't just mean I'm spending less on hardware and software. It means that I might have reduced fraud. I might have created a benefit that is seen in another place, but I can still look at that. Like, I'll use the example, like when we were speeding up food inspection for USDA, the fact that you could do that in a timely manner and not waste food and get it to the right point. That's not a hardware or software thing. That's getting rid of waste, and that is fulfilling the mission. So in some cases, things that we did negated negative outcomes, or I say we, as those project outcomes. And so I think, traditionally, as we walked into it, it was very much kind of hardware and software and IT spend. But as it has evolved and as the types of projects have evolved, they recognize that return that comes from innovative projects may have benefits in many different areas, and that also helps them with the payback.
You both referenced Claire Martirana, who succeeded you, Suzette, as the federal CIO, and she said a number of times when she was on my programs that IT in the federal government's not partisan, and that's striking when we talk about this because when I read about the TMF online, there are members of both parties in Congress that support it. Tony, CIO for President Obama, Suzette, CIO for President Trump 45, and Claire, obviously, for President Biden, and now Greg for President Trump 47. Is there anybody who doesn't like the Technology Modernization Fund? I mean, it's hard to believe such a thing could exist in Washington today.
I'll let Suzette answer that.
Francis, everyone regardless of party, wants to see outcomes that improve, lives for Americans. And again, all these projects, produce results that have meaningful impacts. But I'll just say this, in government, we are spending taxpayers' money. So in use of taxpayers' money, there's always questions of, can you do it better? Can you do it with less? And sometimes if money goes to one thing, that might mean it doesn't go to something else. So sometimes there will be those that kind of look at this as something that was outside kind of their traditional budgeting process, and they have to examine it a little bit more. And I know one of the things that I've talked about specifically with you, and then the different groups of us have talked about, I think the bar for examining ought to be what were results delivered.
Exactly. Yeah. And I'll say, the only pushback I ever got really at the end of the day was, hey, aren't we spending enough money on IT? Can't we, move money from someplace where it's being wasted to someplace where it would be better spent? And I always answered that question by saying, fine, you show me where you think it's being wasted, and I'll be your advocate for that. But nobody ever could answer that question. So, we ended up where we ended up. But, but I think you're right. At the end of the day, I enjoyed bipartisan support. I know Suzette did. I know Claire did. And I hope that continues, because this is a long-term problem with a necessary long-term fix, which is TMF.
Former federal CIO Tony Scott, along with former federal CIO Suzette Kent. You can read more about re-upping the TMF on today's show page, fedgovtoday.com. You'll get more from Suzette and Tony on Thursday's FedGov Today podcast. You can listen to that show and every FedGov Today podcast anytime you want on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or on demand at fedgovtoday.com. The federal government's about a year into Phase 2 of implementation of the Foundations for Evidence-Based Policymaking Act of 2018. One of the focuses of Phase 2 is meeting the law's requirements around agency data. You'll learn how the Treasury Department's doing it from David Ashley, the acting Chief Data Officer at Treasury. He's on FedGov Today TV this week. You can watch it anytime on the FedGov Today YouTube channel and on demand at fedgovtoday.com. Remember, more with Suzette and Tony on Thursday's FedGov Today podcast. I'm Francis Rose. I'll talk to you then. Thanks for listening.